Hello, Symposiast. I'm Dr. Andrea Pukan, Religious Studies PhD and University Lecturer, and this is your online resource for the academic study of magic, esotericism, paganism, shamanism, and all things occult, including war magic. and Today is going to be a bit of a different episode, and it's going to be more on the practical side of war magic. I can see that in the chat there are Edward and Andrew. Thank you for moderating the chat. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Urso and hello, Gwen. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you here, and thank you, Francis, for joining memberships. Where do we start? So I'm really glad that you people seem to really enjoy my latest video on the history of war magic. And I thought I would also address the practical side. So what I want to do today is based on the experience, the reports that I've read. As you know, I'm an anthropologist of religion, so that means that I work with practitioners, that I attend rituals, that I participate in data collection, that I also share thoughts and the things that we have learned with colleagues that also work with contemporary practitioners. So given that I have access to all this information about the practice of magic and what makes it effective, I thought that I would cover it in this episode. So I will cover first what magic is and what makes it effective, and then go more into details in how this would apply to war magic or political magic or warfare magic, however you want to call it. I'm not sure that there is a specific label or designation to that. So I suppose that we can start and address some of these points. So how to build an effective magical ritual. So there are some points that pertain to magic and what it is and how it works that a lot of people seem to have confused ideas about. This happens more with people that actually don't practice magic or they have no direct relation with practitioners. So, for instance, I've heard people saying, "Oh, if this kind of angel cannot solve all the problems in the world, then it means that magic is not effective, and I won't believe that it even exists." But this is really not the experience of practitioners. The experience of practitioners is not that magic is omnipotent. So I feel like that kind of perception that either magic is completely omnipotent and omniscient and you just, I don't know, wave a wand or summon a demon or an angel and all of your problems are resolved. That kind of very black and white thinking, in my perception, at least in my anecdotal perception, seems to come from people that have a monotheistic background where the god is seen as omnipotent and perhaps are not practitioners or have not worked with practitioners, which is the case for me as an anthropologist and an ethnographer. I work with practitioners, I participate in rituals, I listen to them and what they think is effective or not. So I'm going to try and bring that knowledge to you. So what is magic first and foremost? I really like this definition that I heard recently from, wow, I'm blanking out now on her name. She's at Treadwell's. And if I remember, I'll put it in the description box. I'm just really blanking out on her name. But she says that magic makes something unlikely to happen more likely to occur via occult means. I kind of changed the way that she was explaining it, but I use her definition of making something less likely to occur, more likely to occur. I think this is a very interesting definition of magic, especially if we think about magic in terms of its effectiveness. Obviously, there are many definitions of magic because magic can be defined in so many ways depending on what is your focus, right? Like, for instance, for Crowley was the art and science of causing change in accordance to will. So it depends whether you see magic more holistically as a religious practice or whether you focus more on the effectiveness of the practical side of magic. So I would say that if you focus when it comes to definition of magic, if you focus more on the effectiveness side, the practical side, I think this is a very good definition, because magic is not something that makes anything happen, but it's something that increases the likelihood of something to happen via occult means that utilize correspondences and rituals and raising and directing of energy. And this obviously can depend on the tradition, but the pattern seems to be quite similar across different traditions, at least in terms of how the effectiveness of magic is perceived. Yes, it is Christina Harrington. Thank you very much. So, so yeah, some of the principles that I have pinpointed in terms of the effectiveness of magic and how you can make the magic more effective and what can help you understand how to make it so is one, the path of least resistance. I have actually a video specifically on the path of least resistance. So if you want to check that out, I think that's a good companion to this video, because there are some elements that I also mentioned there. So the path of least resistance means that when practitioners ask for something to occur via magic, they will, if the magic is effective and if the goal is achievable, as we will see, um, they will get what they ask for, but they cannot control how it's going to happen. There are very extreme examples that are often given in practitioners' books. Like, for instance, you ask for money and you get a car accident and the insurance pays you, or you ask for a big sum of money and somebody in your family dies and leaves you the inheritance. So these are extreme cases, but they convey well the fact that the practitioner can ask for something, but how it's gonna manifest, it's something that is not, it doesn't seem to be in control of the practitioner. And what a lot of practitioners have said is that magic works via the path of least resistance. So what is the most likely way that the thing that you ask for might occur, that's how it's going to manifest. So this is what the path of least resistance means. So magic is not supernatural. Magic is something that practitioners believe is fully immersed in nature. So the easiest pathway for the thing that you're asking for to manifest, that's how it's going to happen. And very often, as mortals, we don't have a full understanding of what might be the easiest, most likely pathway for our desire to manifest. So this is something to bear in mind, because sometimes you might, to achieve what you want as a practitioner, it might happen in a way that you might not like. So this is also something that needs to be considered, but also the path of least resistance is a good guidance to understand how magic works. Then there are the laws of sympathy and contagion, which were highlighted by Fraser in the Golden Bow. He says that in his view, magic is ruled by these two laws. The law of sympathy means that the like attracts the like. And this is very inspired by Hermetic understandings of the word. So, for instance, if the law of sympathy means that when two things resemble each other, they retain some sort of connection, so that you can leverage one to affect the other. So, for instance, a walnut, given that it resembles a brain, that it means that it can be used in magic to affect the brain, because the similarity means that they retain some sort of connection. And this is based on the conception and cosmological view that everything is linked and connected by invisible ties. So if you pull one, you can affect something at a distance. And one of the ways to do so is by leveraging the law of sympathy, that things that resemble each other will affect each other. And then there's the law of contagion, which means that things that have been in contact with each other also retain the power to affect one another. So, for instance, if you have hair of the hair of somebody, or a piece of clothing that somebody has worn, it is believed by practitioners using the law of contagion that it can be useful to create a link so that you can affect that person. So this is what the law of contagion means, that things that have been in contact retain a contagious power with each other. That's the sense. Then another thing that is interesting to cover is because, as I said, most practitioners don't really believe that magic can, do absolutely everything. So there are things that are doable and things that are not doable because magic makes something less likely to occur, more likely to occur. So I created the video on the path of least resistance that I made for YouTube, this equation. So I'm gonna expand on it here, which is somewhat inspired by Peter Carroll's equation of magic, but it's a little bit different. So this is my version. So here, E represents the energy that is required to achieve a desired outcome. R is the resistance or opposition that it faces. P is the probability of the outcome occurring naturally, so without magical intervention. And K is a constant that adjusts the relationship between the variables. So this formula implies that the energy that is needed increases with greater resistance and decreases with higher natural probability of the outcome. And I think that it abstractly models how esoteric principles might operate. And it suggests that easier paths require less energy. And these align with the principle that magic operates via the path of least resistance. So I think that this is an interesting model because it gives a sense that the more unlikely something it is to occur naturally, the more energy you need to a practitioner needs to put into a ritual so that the ritual will actually be effective and the magic will be effective. Now, this brings us to the third part here, the stepwise goals and the group work. So if a practitioner wants to do a magic ritual for something that is relatively unlikely to happen, okay, this means that they will need a lot of energy to raise a lot of energy. So how can a practitioner achieve a very difficult goal? So one way would be to split the ritual and split the goal into different steps. So for instance, if you are, I don't know, a teenager and you want to become an astrophysics, if you do a magic ritual to become an astrophysician, then you will likely be unsuccessful because it is so unlikely to occur naturally that you will need to raise so much energy that is impossible for a single person. So the thing that the person here could do would be to split the goal into different steps. So for instance, to achieve their diploma first and to get into the right college so that they can become a great astrophysician, and then to get a job at the right moment and at the right time once the degree is achieved. This is a very simple way of explaining how practitioners can split a very big goal into little steps and progressive steps. More than little steps, I suppose they are more achievable steps, but also they are progressive. So splitting the major goal into progressive steps so that it becomes much more likely for that thing to occur. And so you don't need to, the practitioner doesn't need to raise as much energy. So it becomes more doable in terms of the effectiveness. Another way to raise energy that could also be used in conjunction with the stepwise approach is to work with groups. So when multiple people work together, then the energy that is raised in the ritual, and so the effectiveness is amplified. There are some practitioners say that when you work in groups is not an addition, but it is the energy is multiplied exponentially. So working in groups, which could be physical groups or also could be combined effort. I think an example of this is the Unfortune in the Magical Battle of Britain. I have a dedicated Magus lecture episode, a Magus lecture on the topic on my Patreon in case you guys are interested. But I really admire Dion Fortune. So she was sending these newsletters during the Second World War, and the point was really to create a group magic activity where they would all focus on the same visualizations and the same rituals to protect Britain from a German invasion. So yeah, I really admire the Unfortunate's approach to war magic. So if there is one practitioner that I really look up to of all the ones that have talked about that, it is definitely the Unfortunate. I think it's also very sweet that there's a page in the Magical Battle of Britain where she says that she doesn't want to do any destructive magic because not even the Nazis are evil people and deserve that. I thought that was very sweet. But anyway, not digressing too much. So I think that these are all things to take into consideration to for practitioners that want to do what Jason Miller calls strategic sorcery. I have interviewed before Jason Miller on my channel, and I really like his concept of strategic sorcery. He also talks about these type of things that I'm mentioning in his books, and the idea that in order for magic to be effective, it needs to be planned very carefully because it's not Harry Potter and it's not like you wave a wand and everything is gonna appear. But there are practitioners that plan their rituals very carefully to the point where they can progressively achieve what it is that they want. Another thing to take into account, especially given that now we are talking about war magic, is the fact that there might be people that are also practicing magic and they are practicing magic to obtain something that is in contrast to what we're asking. So I've seen conversations between practitioners saying, "Oh, so if like in a witch war or in a situation of war magic, if you have two people that are doing magic to win, for instance, to win a war, who's gonna win?" Now, obviously, there are many things at play in a war besides magic. But if the focus was just on assessing which magical practices were more effective, um, probably the ones that have implemented these strategies, that have been more strategic in their sorcery in terms of the amount of energy that they were able to raise and also how they planned and what specifically they asked for. So I think that planning strategically what a practitioner asks for in a magic ritual is very essential, as well as constructing the ritual strategically according to the points that I have mentioned, and taking in consideration the fact that the more unlikely something is to happen, the more you need to raise energy. And there are ways to do so, but to an extent. So it might be a good idea to evaluate, to also learn the situation that the practitioner is in very carefully and know in this case, the geopolitical situation very well, so that that kind of assessment can be made. Although obviously, I think that all of us have limitations in our understanding of what's going on from global perspective, because we are always exposed to limited and sometimes biased information. But I think that for any type of magic, the better the person knows the circumstances, the better they can plan the kind of strategic sorcery that I'm mentioning here. So as we mentioned, then magic shifts the probabilities rather than guarantees outcomes. This is, as I said, all the information that I'm providing is based on all the data that I collected with practitioners and the conversations that we've had on the effectiveness of magic. So this is what what's being reported. So it necessitates realistic goal setting for effective political interventions, given that this is the topic of today's episode. So, for instance, given that the path of least resistance tells us that things will occur using the path of least resistance, which could be also something that we haven't thought about. The most likely way that the thing that you're asking for is going to occur. That's how it's going to occur. So this kind of advocates using a proportional amount of energy to enhance existing political inclinations and relationships for effective intervention. So one way that practitioners might leverage the path of least resistance would be to look at existing political inclinations, the ones that are more towards what is the intent that you want to that a practitioner wants to do their practice for, and sort of boost that political inclination. It could be sort of boosting the charisma of a specific politician that is, for instance, fostering a more peaceful situation, a more peaceful environment, and also perhaps fostering relationships conducive to peace. So that would be an interesting way. But as I said, also the path of least resistance tells us that you can ask for something, but the way it's gonna occur, it might not quite be what you think. But it's still interesting to assess and evaluate what would be the most likely thing to occur now so that the desired outcome will manifest. Also, incremental steps can improve the success in political goals, and they can begin with small objectives like enhancing diplomacy or easing antagonisms or securing peace treaties progressively. And yeah, also the idea of group rituals, as we mentioned, is an interesting one. So I would say that using all of those elements, all of those strategic elements to build an effective ritual might be an interesting solution for practitioners that want to do war magic, or perhaps peace magic could also be called. But yeah, I suppose that taking all of those things into consideration, what I would think if I were a practitioner and I wanted to affect the political situation in a way that is conducive to peace, I would think about, okay, what is the most likely way that this might occur? And then think about also, another thing that I didn't mention was that there are some practitioners during war magic that have focused more on protection of their country. And this is the case with Yon Fortune, for instance. She was focusing on protecting her country, and she was leveraging on the mythology of Britain and using, for instance, King Arthur and Merlin and the mythology from this land to protect it against the invasion of the Nazis and to protect it generally throughout the war. So, for instance, her strategy wasn't quite that of affecting. Well, I think that there was some element of affecting politicians, because also in war magic, another thing that you may have seen in my previous video, which was more of a historical overview, is that there are some practitioners that in the past have focused more on domination, which means dominating another political adversary or another political party. And other practitioners that have focused more on protection or on divination. So it is said that, for instance, John Dee has used divination to help Elizabeth I to win against the Spanish Armada. So there are many different strategies that practitioners have used for the centuries to be effective at war magic, whether it be formulas for protection or domination, or I think that with domination, I would be a bit more skeptical about that, especially when it is domination of politicians, because a lot of practitioners, I don't know if this is something that resonates with you guys in the US as well, but a lot of practitioners in Italy have the belief that politicians have are very difficult to reach in terms of mind control and domination type of rituals. So I've had a lot of practitioners saying, oh, but you cannot directly affect a politician because there was one recently that said that they tried to affect a specific politician and they couldn't reach them, that they tried to do a visualization and they couldn't. There was like sort of a cloud around them. And it is something that I've heard quite a bit. So there have been several informants that have reported the same thing, that especially the big politicians, and they have explained this in different ways. There are some practitioners that say that because they are not just people, when they become public figures, they have a whole egregore around them, which is sort of a thought form type of energy around them. So there has been this speculation, and also there's the idea that when somebody is in a position of power, they just have a higher degree of protection because of that power, because everything that is the material and the spiritual and the esoteric are not believed by practitioners to be different. They are completely intertwined. So having power on the material world also translates into having some power and protection on the esoteric, in the esoteric dimension. So I was having a conversation with practitioners because I was thinking what I can tell to my symposiast about war magic that can be useful and effective if people want to um, do something to help the global situation. And some of these practitioners said they wouldn't use magic to affect politicians because it would just be useless, and they think that it's much better to address the rituals to situations rather than doing sort of mind control domination type of magic, but more to affect situations towards a specific direction. Another very common theme was to use group rituals. And I imagine that especially in times of war, it might be difficult to have a specific group that you can see physically, but this is something that has been done, for instance, by the Unfortunate, as I mentioned, even via newsletters. So group magic can also be done at a distance when people all focus on the same intent and do the same ritual at the same time, and they, cooperate and connect even at a distance. So they can that is also reported to be very powerful by practitioners. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to point out. But I think that I said the most important things about political magic and the strategies to achieve results in that kind of environment. I'm gonna try and see if there are any questions now that I can reply. So as always, it's always better if you have a question, just put question first in caps lock so that I can see it more easily. But yeah, as Sean pointed out, it is Christina Oakley Harrington that pointed out magic is makes something less likely to happen more likely to happen. I thought, oh, that's like a great explanation actually. But as I said, it really depends on what is your where you put your focus when it comes to defining magic. So let me see. I can't see specific questions. Andrew has put in the chat the link to the interview with Jason Miller. Thank you, Ray, for saying that you enjoyed the last video on war magic. Harold says intuition versus willpower. What do you mean? Which one is more effective? Context. Gooper says, my own magic practice has been the same with attempting to influence American political figures. So I'd be interested in knowing how did you do that, if you want to share that in the chat. So how did you try and do that? Was it via mind control, or how did you structure the ritual? So Kari is saying, Professor, what do you think about the current global chaos spell going on right now? It's been in motion for years now, including time fasting. So, as you know, I don't talk about politics very much on this channel. I think I don't even in the last video on war magic, I didn't particularly talk about my political views. I generally tend not to talk too much about my own opinions and beliefs. But what I can tell you is that what I think is that I needed to make these videos, and I needed to stray away a little bit to provide people with practical information that I know, because I've been with so many practitioners over the years that I really know how people structure magic for it to be effective, and they report effectiveness. This is not something that can be assessed academically in a peer-reviewed manner. The effectiveness of these things, I have my own belief, my own opinion about the relationship between science and magic. I have a dedicated Magus lecture again on my Patreon on whether magic can be proven scientifically. But I think that the method of science is not particularly tailored to understand magic. It is designed for a reductivist approach, and magic is holistic, is not reductivist. It cannot be reduced, I don't think. Harry is saying, how does karma work when trying to change will or outcomes? That's an interesting question and difficult to answer, because it really depends on your belief system. So I suppose that I was focusing on magic effectiveness, trying to abstract from the different types of esoteric traditions, because different esoteric traditions may be related to different religious views and religious beliefs. And I was trying to abstract just the practical, effective, oriented part of structuring magic. But first of all, not everybody believes in karma. It is a concept that has been imported and reinterpreted from India, but even the way that it is and it is understood in certain Indian traditions is not the same as it is understood in the Western world. So it depends if you believe in karma to begin with. So there are some practitioners that don't believe in karma. So because and I think that that's quite persuasive, to be fair, because I suppose it depends how you conceptualize it. If you conceptualize karma as in the way that I've seen it conceptualized in some Indian traditions, where karma is consequences following actions, then yes, obviously there are consequences following actions. And if you perceive it as that what you do is gonna come back to you, then I think it's a bit complex. Things come back to you in the sense that you have consequences from your actions, yes. But I think that when it is oversimplified in that, oh, if you do something good, then something good is going to happen to you. If you do something bad is going to happen to you. I think that it's way too simplistic, and it's like, what even is something good or something bad? Because there are cases where this is very clear, but in a lot of cases, it's a very gray area. Like, for instance, if you do a ritual to get a job, that's usually considered something positive and good, but you are taking the job away from somebody else that might need it more than you do. So is that gonna have some karmic consequences, as people say, meaning that something bad is gonna happen to you? I don't find that concept persuasive, to be honest. I think that it's probably a way that during the New Age movement phenomenon, people have tried to create an ethic and a morality because they felt uncomfortable with the freedom that historic practices were giving them without a god that sends you to hell, or the or a specific priest that tells you this is a sin. Maybe people felt a bit like they didn't have an ethical compass, something to guide them as to what, what to do or what not to do. These are conversations that I have a lot with my students, because actually this semester I was teaching a module on ethics. So we were talking about all the different ethical frameworks. I find a form of utilitarianism more persuasive, meaning that you assess. Um, First of all, I don't personally espouse the categories of good and evil. I feel that they are theological categories. So I tend to talk more about beneficial and harmful. And the form of utilitarianism that I find most persuasive is the one that says a good action is an action that causes the most beneficial outcomes to the people involved and the least amount of harm to the people involved. An undesirable, a bad action, would be an action that causes um, most harm to the people involved and the least benefit to the people involved. By people involved, I mean people that will suffer or feel the consequences of your action. So this would be the ethical parameter that I find the most persuasive. But obviously, everybody has their own. Sunny says, wasn't magic used to influence the war during World War II on both sides? Yeah, if you watch my latest video, which has been quite popular actually, so I mentioned that. So yes, I think that in the world history, I would be really shocked and surprised if I found a war where that there weren't esoteric practices involved. There was in where was it, in Malmo? It wasn't last year. It was 2 years ago. There was the conference of the European Society for the Study of Western Historicism, and I was chairing a panel, and it was actually on war and aestheticism, funny enough. Um, and there was a Ukrainian scholar that was giving a paper on Ukrainians, especially Ukrainian women, and how they were using magic to, um, to win the war and to contrast the Russians. And she was also pointing out the different strategies between Russia and Ukraine. One thing that I thought was interesting is that in Russia, they were using a more Christian framework to do that. And in Ukraine, given that they wanted to distance themselves from the Russian culture, they would use more folk magic. And so they would go more to the roots of their folk magic practices, whereas Russia would use more Christian-based type of historic practices and um, and associate demons with Ukrainians and things of this sort. One thing that really stuck to me, and I think it would be difficult for me to find it on the internet because it was in Russian, but it was this really beautiful curse song, because she also talked about curse songs. Hope I'm pronouncing it right. So these are songs that are meant to curse um, the Russians. And there was one on YouTube that she showed us, and it was, it really shocked me. It's like it was really intense. If I find it, I'll put it in the description box, but might be difficult. I should have saved it at the time, but because the title is in Russian, and I believe that the song was also in Russian because the curse song was addressed to the Russians. So they would, despite being Ukrainians, they would use Russian. So yeah, it's fascinating. But as to reply to your question, I think that it's I would be shocked if I found that there's been no esoteric practice during any war, to be fair, because I don't think that that's the case. And I know that some people that have a view of magic as something that is um, either or. It's like, oh, then magic is not true and it's not real because see, everybody uses magic on both sides, but that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't help them win the war. I always find these assertions very silly, to be fair. It's a bit like saying, oh, see, the bombs and the arms don't work because both parties use them. And there's one that wins and one that loses. But that doesn't mean that the arms that the people the people that lost didn't work or were not real, right? So it's a bit more complicated than that. I think I wish that people started to look at magic in a way as that is as nuanced as people hopefully look at things in the material world, because very very often I see that magic is addressed with these very incredible expectations. Like if magic is real, then just wave a wand and change the world and make it all pink or whatever. These very bombastic assertions that either you can do absolutely everything or then magic is not real. It's a bit like saying either you know absolutely everything or you don't have a PhD. It's not real, your PhD, because you don't know everything. I think that I don't even know everything about the subject area that I have a PhD in, let alone about everything. So, I mean, I have a PhD in religious studies, as also my tag says, but religious studies is immense. So I definitely do not know everything about religious studies. I know the things about my own area of expertise, which is paganism, esotericism, witchcraft. But religious studies also includes Christianity, monotheistic religions, and also the nuns, the non-religious. So it's quite ample. Let me see if there are other questions. As a musician, I'd like to hear more about those curse songs or any other use of music in magic occult. Um, so I think that I elaborated at least as far as I know. I can I can look up the name of the scholar and put it in the info box afterwards, because I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I think Katerina, but I can't remember the surname. So I'll have to look her up. But yeah, it was really impressive because they were using songs, but also images in the songs that were like really impressive. Like these the song that I talked about, the one that really shocked me, like wow, it really felt intense. One of the words that she was repeating in Russian was sleep, sleep. And it was reinforcing the fact that the land was theirs. And I don't know, I just saw that even from a human point of view, even not considering the historic side of it, it was really impressive, and I personally found it very moving. Green says that magic doesn't come for free. This is another topic that actually I didn't cover in the points that I made. Probably because the points that I wanted to make for this episode were more about how to build an effective ritual rather than the aftermath of magic. And but there are lots of practitioners that report having something, experiencing something, um, such as a backlash, And there are also people saying, obviously we don't know anything for certain, but the Operation Cone of Power, the one by Gerald Gardner during the Second World War. I also mentioned that in my previous video on the historical overview of war magic. And there are people saying that some people fainted, some people died because of the intensity of the ritual. So there is a common belief among practitioners that there's usually a backlash, some kind of price to pay, which I wouldn't akin to the concept of karma, that if you do something then it's gonna come back to you. At least I don't conceptualize it in that way. I suppose that it really depends how people conceptualize the concept of karma. But yeah, there are many practitioners that report that, and I haven't come across a person saying explaining how that backlash can be avoided, because I've heard some practitioners, especially I'm thinking about a South American shaman now, that she told me that she thinks it's unavoidable, but you can minimize it by giving offerings to the entities that you work with. So some practitioners do believe that the sort of backlash or the price you have to pay for a ritual can be minimized by working with entities, with working with specific gods, goddesses, entities of, depending on what is it the entities that the practitioner is working with, and leaving offerings to them. So some practitioners believe that there's a way to minimize the backlash by doing that. And yeah, if you guys know any other way to minimize or even annul about what practitioners report to be a backlash for magic, or the price that you have to pay, let me know either in the chat or in the comment after the live stream, because I'd really be interested, because I don't think that I've come across practitioners mentioning that it's possible to completely avoid the backlash. There are some practitioners that don't talk about the backlash at all, but those that do mention it, then it seems like they think that you can minimize the price to pay, but not completely eliminate it. But if you have different reports, let me know, because as an anthropologist, I'm very interested in knowing that. And Sean says, peace in our generation question. Any commentary on trance state on war magic? This is a good question. So trance states are often employed as a means to raise the energy. So when I talked earlier about the effectiveness of rituals and the fact that you need to, I mean, generally speaking, in magical rituals, there's the belief that you raise energy through your body and through your ritualistic practice, and then that energy that you raise gets directed towards the goal that you have set for your ritual. And trance is one of the ways whereby practitioners both raise energy, but also enter in communication with the entities that they're working with. So trance states are used for different aspects of the ritual and can be used differently also depending on the tradition. So different traditions will employ it differently. But it seems common that trance states are used to enter the ritualistic space, to communicate with spirits and entities, enter in contact with them and asking for their guidance, power, and knowledge so that the ritual is more effective. And also, trance states are used to raise energy and direct it towards the goal. So I suppose that the use in war magic would be similar to the one that is used for any other spell. I'm thinking that Operation Cone of Power perhaps is the war magic occurrence that comes to mind, because they were using this cone of power and the dancing, dancing and music, because we were talking about music earlier. These are great ways that according to practitioners, people can raise energy and make the magic effective. Raise energy and also direct it. It's very common. And that's also one of the reason is connected to the trance states that they induce. I hope that that answers the question. Blackthorn Rose says, minimize the price. Why not take responsibility and pay the price? I mean, how bad do you want it? If I want a new car, I can borrow and pay interest, or I can save up and buy it. That's a good point, Blackthorn. And this is something that I've had before when there have been conversations with practitioners about this topic. There are some people who don't even see that price to pay as something bad. They just see it as a natural law. That's why I said I don't think that I've ever come across a practitioner that says that you can completely avoid it. But if you guys have, I'd be super interested in knowing. But yeah, the concept is that either I have heard practitioners saying exactly what you said. It's like magic is very similar to any other thing in life, any other thing that works in life. So if you want a car, you have to pay for the car. So either you borrow and pay interest, or either you save and buy it. You still have to exchange something for something else. In this case, you have to exchange money for a car. And there are practitioners say it's exactly the same with magic. So there's always going to be a price to pay for a ritualistic action because of the fact that that is just a natural law, and it applies to nature, and it applies to magic in a view where magic is not supernatural. Even though in monotheistic worldviews it's been seen more as supernatural, I'd say that more pagan polytheistic frameworks tend to not, and animistic frameworks don't see magic as supernatural, they see it as natural. And so magic is just one of the things that occurs in nature, and it follows the natural laws. It's just that the laws that it follows are not obvious to us, because not being material cannot be assessed by the reductivist and materialist oriented tools of science. But yeah, it's a good point. So that's a stance that I've seen many practitioners take. Junkyard Monk says, I use trance states a lot and always get a hangover after a strong urgent working, especially when working with what we can think of as martial or Saturnine workings and energy. This reminds me of another thing that practitioners often report, which is the need to ground themselves after rituals, especially intense rituals. And that could be related to the concept of the sort of backlash or the price to pay, because there are some practitioners that after a ritual, when they don't do the grounding correctly, they start having headaches and feeling really sick. So so yeah, it is something that also to keep in mind. Let me see if there are other questions. William Newman is saying, can you discuss the value of spiritual patronage as an alternative to raise energy? Friendly gods and goddesses with a vested interest in your success. Yeah, this is an interesting point. I think that it is also a very valuable approach. So by spiritual patronage, I'm assuming that you mean when a practitioner works with an entity, it could be a goddess, a god, the spirit of the land, a demon, an angel, whatever, any entity. Saints, there are also practitioners that work with saints. So I'm assuming that what you mean is an ongoing work with an entity, and asking to this entity to to help a specific political situation. Is that what you mean? So what I think is that it is also according to what practitioners have told me, it's a good strategy for, how can I explain it? It's like little consistent changes, but I think that if you want something big to occur, like a big change as opposed to a slow and steady change towards a certain direction, I think that based on what practitioners have said, that you would still need to execute a ritual and ask, for still for the interception of the entities that you work with as part of the ritual. But I'm not sure that an ongoing patronage just by the ongoing practice in and of itself without a ritual where you raise the energy towards the goal, I'm not sure that it would be effective towards a big change that you want to make. So that's what I think. Yes, this stream will be on my channel after we end the stream. So don't you guys worry about that. Oh, thank you, Jessica. That's lovely of you. Thanking me for the content. Thank you for supporting my work. That's always deeply appreciated. So Frater RC says, in the Golden Dawn tradition, we believe we never receive backlash nor pay any price for this kind of magic. But we also take vows to not practice evil magic, of course. Okay, that's interesting. And what classified as evil magic? Christopher says the ethics of spiritual action is not different from the ethics of physical actions. You are either justified in doing it or you aren't. Self justification will not mitigate the effect of a cause. I'm not sure what you mean because you have consequences from your actions regardless of whether they can be seen as ethically correct or not, or ethically justified or not. So if we talk about consequences of actions, those are present regardless. I definitely stand by what Hank just said. Evil magic is calling for a cocoa crop failure. Hank, you always know the truth. Yeah, and Fratersi says exactly what does classify as evil magic. Yeah, as I said, I don't know if uh, you came after that part when I was talking about the ethics. I don't like the terms good and evil. I think that they are theological categories that are connected to specific religious theologies. So I think that it's more interesting and perhaps accurate, at least in my point of view, that to talk about beneficial and harmful magic. Because, when you talk about good and evil, it sort of conjures this transcendental belief, or this is a sin and then you will go to hell if you do it. But I think it's much more accurate to look at ethics based on the consequences that your actions have on the people around you, on the planet where you live in, on what surrounds you, as opposed to what happens in a potential afterlife, which might or might not exist. Which reminds me that regardless of even though I don't particularly share my religious beliefs, I might in the future, we will see. But one thing that I do believe and I can share is that I think it's always very healthy to postulate the possibility that what you believe in, even if it is like, even if it's your whole personality, and if it means your life to you, which is the case for me with my beliefs, but I still think that it's a healthy approach to always have it in the back of your mind. I could be wrong, and this might not be real. And I know that it may sound awful to some people, especially when you believe in something very strongly. But personally, I think that it's a healthy way to approach even the strongest belief, because that prevents you from becoming a fundamentalist and somebody that wants to impose your beliefs onto others, which is something that I completely abhor. I really have a problem with people wanting to convert and proselytize. Could be my upbringing, but it's not something that I really prefer to. I do have strong beliefs, so don't get me wrong, I'm not an atheist, I can say that, but I still think I want to build my actions thinking, okay, I believe that, and this is of course very meaningful to me, and it is driving to a good extent my decisions. But if it wasn't real, would this action still be okay? I kind of have these sort of mind games with myself. And that's why I think that when it comes to ethics, for me, the best guidance is to look at the effect that what I do has and what is most beneficial or most harmful to the majority of the people involved, because something can always be harmful to at least somebody. Let me see if there are other questions. Otherwise, I suppose we can wrap it up here. Oh, we have Pancateria. A great episode as always. I much appreciate your channel and shared your knowledge. Cheers and much love from Philadelphia, 93s. Thank you very much. I appreciate your kind words. So I think that we can wrap it up here, and let me know what you guys thought about this video in the comments, and whether you're watching it now or later. Leave me I want to say a peace emoji in the comments, but I'm not sure if there is a peace emoji, and I cannot check my phone because I'm using it as a camera. So uh, leave me an emoji that to you conjures a sense of peace. And also let me know in the comments what you thought about this video, and I hope that you will share it around so that the symposium can grow. And also, as you know, this project is it can only exist thanks to your support. I don't have any fancy sponsor, I just have you guys. So if you have the means and want to support me, I would massively appreciate it if you joined my fantastic and growing Patreon community. You can support me by joining memberships. You can check out my services at drangelapuca.com. You can get tutoring sessions with me, one-to-one conversations. There are my courses. There's also a translation of Isabella Cortese's book. So there's a lot there. So check out drangelapuca.com. And also don't forget to sign up for my newsletter so that you get all the news about me that I don't share on other social media platforms. And my newsletter is also on my website. So if you go on my website, you can also join my newsletter. And also all these links are in the info box, in the cards, in bio, everywhere. So thank you all so much for considering, and thank you for coming over. And I really hope that I'm gonna see you again in my next one next Sunday. Oh, actually, it's next Saturday that I have the next live stream with Tanya Lerman. So I hope to see you guys there, because it's gonna be an interesting one. So thank you all so much for being here, and I hope that you stay tuned for all the academic fun. Bye for now. Today we hold the drum, we'll never disappear.